Now this now is the top rail, and this is 38mm thick, so I've set my height here to 19, and I've got 3 joints to do, 1 centred on the end and 2 down the side. Now, as always, it's always important to reference off the same face edge or face side, whichever it might be, so that you've got consistency with the heights. Even if you're a fraction out, then it won't matter. So this next piece of stock is 32mm thick, so I need this to be on the halfway mark, which is 16. Now, in order to put this together, I've made up some undersized dominoes which will come out easily, because then I don't need to glue everything up. And it's the order in which we would assemble this if we were gluing it for real, which is important. Now, with domino work, the domino goes at right angles to the surface, so therefore the piece of wood wants to travel downwards like this. So it would be no good doing this piece first and then trying to introduce this diagonal brace, because it would be trying to move the dominoes down at a very strange angle. So you've got to bring things together in the right way. So in this case, we've got this brace which has got to go here. So I'm going to pop this in here. And that's in there pretty much lined up. And now we've got a straight surface here which we can attach to this piece. So I'll put these dominoes in here. And then these two go down like so. So that's those done. And now all that's left is another manoeuvre against this piece, and I'll pop these dominoes in, and then all that's left is to bring this down onto here. Now, from that angle you can probably see that things are centred up as they should be, and obviously at this stage we would need to put some clamps on. Well, it's easy enough to put a clamp from there to there, but these diagonal ones can be a bit tricky. And so this is the sort of thing that you can do. You can put a clamp on something like this, which is fixed onto this intermediate brace, and then another clamp going in from behind to draw in to this piece. And using that sort of technique, it might be quite complicated for you, but eventually you can bring all of the pieces together as they should be. So it's not glued, but it's pushed together using those slightly undersized dominoes, and there you can see the effect. So this is with the Domino 500, and that could be a quite substantial piece of furniture. It might be part of a bed. It could even be a small gate. Now, I don't think there are any strategies for tackling even bigger projects than this sort of thing with the DF 500, apart from perhaps making your own extra wide dominoes. But sometimes it's better to have 2 normal sized dominoes rather than one big extra size one. So you need to think that through. So let's now turn to the DF 700 and see if we can make that any more useful at the smaller end. Now, we know the smallest cutter that Festool make for the DF 700 is the 8mm one. And if you look at this 6mm cutter from the DF 500 and imagined it made a lot bigger to that sort of length, you can see that it would be quite a flimsy item. Now, wouldn't it be nice if you could put a DF 500 cutter onto your DF 700? But of course the threads are different. But there's a company in America called Seneca Woodworking who've come up with an adapter. And basically their adapter screws onto the front thread of the DF 700 domino. And it screws on like so. You would fix it with the spanner in the normal way. And once you've done that, it then offers the same thread that you find on the DF500 Domino. And so you can take your DF500 cutter, like this one, and fit it. And you can now see, if I compare that to this original DF700 cutter, they look to be the right size. Let's put this through its paces. Right, now this is my strategy. I've got a block of wood and I've marked where I'm going to be putting the 4mm, 5mm and 6mm slots. And what I want to achieve is suitable slots for the standard domino sizes. That's 6x40, so in other words a 20mm deep slot. I've got a 5x30, so it's a 15mm deep slot, and I've got a 4x20, so that's a 10mm deep slot. Now initially I'm going to put these in all the same height so that they are 10mm to their centre below this surface here. But then I want to find a way of putting them at the sort of depth below the surface that you might expect if, for example, with a 4mm domino, you'd expect to be putting this into stock which is about 12mm thick. So therefore, I want to see how I'm going to go about putting one in 6mm below the surface, bearing in mind that the DF700 can only go to a minimum of 10 below a surface. So we've got to find a way of sorting that out. Okay, so I've got a 4mm cutter in here. It's set to a 10mm height, and the depth of cut, because it's the 4mm cutter, I've set it to 20, because remember the 4mm cutter is 10mm shorter than the others. So for a 10mm slot, the depth is set to 20. And there's that 4mm slot. And for the 5mm cutter, I've set the depth on the side here to 15 because the dominoes for these are 30mm long. And for the 6mm domino, I'm putting the depth back to 20 because the 6mm dominoes are 40mm long. So in order to allow the cutter to be closer to the surface here, I've put a little plate of 4mm thick perspex on here. It's been done very simply. There's a little block of wood there, and if I turn this over, you can see that I've screwed it through the perspex into the block of wood, and that holds that in place. I put a centre line down here as well, so I can look through and hopefully get it right. Now, because that's 4mm, that means I've now got to be quite clever with my height adjustment. So with a 6mm cutter, I want 9. So add 4 to that, that makes 13. So I've got to set my height gauge on 13. So there we go, it's all set up now, and I can now line that up. There's a tiny bit of parallax, so you've got to look carefully down from the top. And there we go. You can probably see that I've got a centre mark there, and that's on that centre mark at 9. So I'll do the same technique for the other two, and you'll see that this one gadget, which is very simple to make, can solve the line-up problems. Finally, I've got the 4mm cutter in here. So for this one, it needs to be 6 below the surface. So that means we've adjusted the height here to 10. And I've remembered that because it's a 4mm cutter, I've set the depth to 20. There we go. So you can see each of those three are centered as they should be. Well, I've done my best to point out the principal differences in capability of the two domino machines, and in particular how large you can go with the DF500 and how small you can come down to with the DF700. Now remember, if you're tackling larger projects with the DF500, then the maximum domino size at 10 by 50, you might need to alter your design or put in a few extra dominoes just to make sure. But this is a very capable machine. So if you're a furniture maker, shop fitter, maybe you're in the business of constructing wooden windows or whatever it might be, then this is going to be a very useful machine for you. Particularly if you're doing face frame cabinet construction, if you're doing raised panel doors and you want a little bit of extra strength in them, then this is the ideal machine. Now, I bought mine 3 or 4 years ago, and I've used it almost every single day since then. I think this is the bee's knees machine for me. Now, the DF700, it weighs 2 kilograms more than the other machine, yet I think the ergonomics are much better. It's a lovely machine to hold and to use, and I think the way that the various adjustments are done on the machine, depth and so on, I think that is an improvement on the original DF500 Domino. And if you're making solid wood furniture all day and every day, this is truly the machine for you. And if you want to make really lovely outdoors, as I was indicating, then this really is the machine for the job. But of course it's limited by the size of cutter. It only goes down to 8 millimeters. Now, I'm really surprised that the DF700 doesn't have as an accessory from Festool a little adapter like this, so I can use the DF500 cutters. This innovation by Seneca Woodworking I think is a very clever idea. I've looked at it very carefully. I've got no hesitation in recommending it to you because it works perfectly well. The only consideration to make is that you do need to make up some form of spacer plate and do a few calculations because otherwise the depth of cut is going to be limited to 10 millimeters. But with my spacer plate I was able to get these spot on for those smaller cutters from the DF500 range. And don't forget the accessories which I bought originally with my DF500 fit the DF700 perfectly, and they're used in exactly the same way. So I hope this has been useful. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.